Hello everybody, it's Merlin here and welcome to hopefully yet another new segment. I know I'm pumping out a lot lately, but this should be a regular thing. I'm here with Dan of Film Fanatics fame. That's my weekly podcast that we normally do. If you haven't subscribed to them yet, we review, of course, like these new releases constantly as well as older movies. So if you love film, definitely check us out. I'll leave a link in the description below. But that's not what we're talking about today. The new segment we're beginning is going to be what I'm going to call the Sopranos retrospective. Now, little background on why we're doing this. Dan had never seen The Sopranos before. I haven't talked about it too much, but it's like one of my favorite series of all time. I love the mafia stuff, but I do think Sopranos is like really one of the best like TV dramas of all time. It's still good. I recently rewatched it not too long ago and still felt it really did hold up a lot. And now I'm just kind of letting Dan borrow this, and we're going to do a segment where we talk about each of the 5 episodes starting with season 1 going all the way through. We're going to go by talking about the episodes individually, do a little synopsis, a little discussion. I finally have somebody to talk about Sopranos with. And just for the fun of it, we'll give out some grades for each episode so far, and then we'll do a season as a whole as it concludes. So, Dan?
And not only had I not seen it, but yeah, you had said one of the reasons you wanted me to watch it is because you didn't have a lot of people to talk about it with.
I think it's like an age bracket thing, because I kind of started watching it maybe a little young. I watched it... Basically, what I did was I guess my parents let me rent the some of the Hollywood video stuff. I'd get some video segments and just watch it that way. So when I was about maybe 14 or 15, started to watch it a little bit. Mm-hmm. But of course, everybody that was watching it was probably like at least 10 years older, maybe 20 years older. So nobody really talks about it with me. Mm-hmm. So hey, I'm going to finally have somebody to talk about it.
Yeah, perfect. And like we said, we're going to do 5 episodes weekly. And, and do it that way. So, all right. Now, the pilot episode is the one thing of The Sopranos that I had seen previously.
Okay.
One of my friends from college, his family was super into this show, and I was at their house for a dinner one night, and they were like, hey, let's watch the pilot of The Sopranos again.
Is that great?
their monthly ritual, I guess. So this I had seen before, and basically what happens is we're introduced to a lot of people. Tony Soprano, of the crime family here, begins his therapy with Dr. Jennifer Melfi after he has an anxiety attack. His mother, Livia, refuses to move to a nursing home, and Uncle Junior, Tony's uncle, wants to use Tony's friend's restaurant as a location for murder, but Tony ends up having the restaurant blown up instead. And Tony's nephew here, Christopher, murders the representative of a mob that was trying to move in on the family. Now, Tony's front is that he's, in this waste management. The whole family's in the waste management. This is what he tells Dr. Melfi. Mm-hmm. Now, right away from the first time I saw this, I was super into the Dr. Melfi character.
Lorraine Bracco. Okay.
Lorraine Bracco. I really, really loved her dynamic with Tony, and I've really enjoyed watching this grow throughout all the 5 episodes so far.
Oh, it's going to continue.
I mean, she's pretty much right in the beginning. If it's not the first scene, it's maybe the second scene of the entire series. Mm-hmm. Is him in the chair and sort of explaining his life to her
while still trying to keep it a bit of a secret.
Yeah, and that's I really like this was written and directed by David Chase. I really liked what he does here with having Tony explain it to Dr. Melfi as the quote-unquote waste management guy, but then as he says something innocuous like, oh yeah, we met my friend, Jimmy for lunch, and then we see the flashback in his mind of, no, they're like running him over with a car and torturing him.
To collect a loan or something.
Yeah, it's a really cool way to sort of engage the audience while still keeping them understanding what her role is here, and then the stuff with Tony's mom, boy, she's just an evil character, isn't she?
I hate Livia. She's probably one of my least favorite characters. I'm sorry, there is nothing to like about her.
Yeah.
Man, right off the bat, she just gives him such a hard time constantly. And you'll see, he tries. You'll even see in the first episode, he's trying to be a good son.
He's been trying.
And all she will do is complain, get used to that. Get used to that.
And Uncle Junior, is her brother, I guess, right? In-law, okay.
Yep.
So, I mean, he tends to side with her on matters instead of Tony. It's like, that's frustrating. So, overall, it's sort of a little hard to give these episodes grades at this point just because I only have the 5 to go on.
Look at it in context.
But this is certainly one of the best, so far that I've seen. I'm going to give this one an A-.
Oh, wow.
The second episode is called 46 Long. And in this one, Christopher and this Brendan guy begin hijacking trucks.
Ah, yes.
Okay, because that's just what they do. And they find out that the owner of the trucks pays Junior for protection.
It's one of his businesses.
So then their drug addictions prevent them from respecting his orders to stop. They're all addicted to all kinds of stuff, really.
I think it's primarily heroin, but they do all kinds of things.
Okay, so also in this episode, Carmela... I don't think we've mentioned her yet. That's the wife, played by Nurse Jackie. Yeah, Edie Falco. She asked Tony for a favor involving AJ's science teacher's stolen car. He's not doing well in science. I believe he has a D+, he says.
Oh, yeah.
And so he sort of tells her he'll take care of that. And then after one too many accidents that Tony's mom has, he tries to force her into moving into a nursing home.
If I remember correctly, she leaves something on, starts a fire.
Yes,
yep.
She's on the telephone with him. He's at the bar. And
she's like, oh, God.
Yeah, she's on the phone with him just in a routine call making... I forget what she said. Something Italian.
She's making some Italian dish.
And all of a sudden, like the stove catches fire. And she's on the phone with him, saying, "Oh, you got to come over, Tony. You got to." And he's like, "Mom, 45 minutes away. I can't do that. You got to hang up and call 911." So that was sort of the event that caused him to say, "Look, we got to start seriously talking about this."
Moving into the home, Green Grove, I believe.
I believe that's right. Yeah. This episode really, if the pilot didn't get you, this episode will bring you in.
I remember...
There's a lot going on here.
I remember the second episode was when you start getting a lot more of the crime stuff and the family stuff. There's just a lot happening, a lot of dynamic.
Yeah.
Definitely more exciting than the first one, which is more quiet build-up.
Yeah. I mean, the first one, as I guess any origin story, or for TV shows, the pilot, it's just really a foundation to get to know the characters. I think it's done well, but you're right. This is the episode where it really brings you inside this world of the mob. And we do, of course, still see, some scenes with him and Dr. Melfi. They're getting a little bit more familiar. But the standout plot line of this for me was the AJ science teacher, stolen car bit. Basically, Tony decides, okay, you're getting D+ in science. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to find the guy that stole this car. We're going to make sure your teacher knows I'm the one who did it, Because here's where we really first see the dynamic of Tony's family. We really get a good sense of Carmela and him here. She is forever, infuriated with his cheating ways and this, that, and the other thing. The infidelity. And then we get to know AJ a little bit more. And Meadow we get to know a little bit as well.
Yeah.
She factors in some of these future episodes more. But all in all, I really liked this episode. I as well give it an A-.
Nice.
It's a good building episode. And then we get to number 3, which is called Denial, Anger, Acceptance. And in this, Meadow really features in. She asks Christopher and Brendan for speed to help her and her buddy stay awake for the SAT prep. Also in this episode, the Sopranos hire the Buccos to cater a dinner party.
Artie and his wife.
And then Tony accepts the task of securing a divorce for a Hasidic Jew's daughter. That was a fun plot line.
That's the golem, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
You're a monster.
You're right. And then Junior finds out about the truck hijackings and just releases hell upon Christopher and Brendan. This episode for me was a little bit of a mixed bag.
Okay.
Some of the plot lines I didn't really care that much about. The dinner party was kind of whatever. For me, the main 2 stories here are the Meadow story and Christopher and Brendan's other story, dealing with Uncle Junior. We really get a good sense of the Junior character here.
I think you'll see here that he really is kind of, you're probably starting to notice Mikey a little bit, his advisor. He's kind of pushed by people, Junior.
Okay.
You'll notice that he wants to make a stand, but he's a little out of his depth in some ways. But when he sets his mind on something, he does have some power. And
right.
You'll learn that. And Meadow's storyline, you see that she is more involved with her family, and
Yeah.
maybe a little too much so. And it just gets kind of scary a little afterwards. But so you didn't really care for the whole Hasidic Jew marriage hotel thing.
I mean, it was sort of a cute throwaway story.
It was silly.
It was silly. I don't come to The Sopranos for silly,
Yeah.
I guess, you know. But again, you know, his relationship with Dr. Melfi is growing here. It seems in every episode, really, so far, he ends up storming out of the session in anger. And then they never quite explain why he decides to come back. You know, Carmela knows about the therapy, so it may be something that we don't see, that maybe off the show she's saying, hey, you need to keep going to the therapy, you know. She's unaware that it's a woman, though, at this point.
That does come up later.
Yes, that comes up in episode 5.
Okay, yeah, she freaks out about that at first.
But does she ever, yeah.
Yeah.
So all in all, I give this one a B.
Okay.
It's not quite as balanced as the other ones, but I do like that we're, again, getting to know the family a little bit more. Meadow's storyline really is nice here. Episode 4 is called Meadowlands, and in this one, Tony's having dreams about Dr. Melfi, so he wants to know, like, everything about her, you know, what's going on with her, you know, what is she doing, who is she seeing.
Where he starts to fantasize about her sexually.
Exactly. So he contacts this detective guy, Vin Mazakian, and he follows her around, finds that she's having a date with this gentleman, which gets disrupted by the police. And at the same time in this episode, Christopher is calling for some retaliation against Junior and Mikey, who you just mentioned, for Brendan's death. And then also, this is the episode with, is it Jackie April? April. I'm horrible with Italian names, and I'm half Italian. But the question of who will be this Jackie April's successor arises. He dies, and Tony comes to Uncle Junior with it, and sort of floats that notion, you know, by him that, hey, this should be you. And also, we're moving more towards the nursing home for Livia. She's fighting it tooth and nail still. But it keeps coming up, you know. And at one point, I'm not sure if it's in episode 3 or 4, but, you know, Carmela ends up getting involved as well.
Yeah, she wants to
saying,
help out.
You know, look, Mom, you gotta either come live with us or live in the home, or...
It's interesting in the early episodes when Carmela really was trying to be nice to Livia.
Does that fall by the wayside?
You'll see, but
Okay.
she is trying to be supportive of everybody.
Seems like she's really trying her hardest to...
keep everyone together.
Keep the family together, yeah, basically.
She is a good character. That is kind of her point. She is that mom, but she still has her own issues to deal with too.
Yeah.
As you'll probably deal with later.
You can see that she's definitely starting to crack and sort of get tired of everything, you know.
Well,
again with the infidelity.
As the season goes on, you'll see it. It is building towards that.
I believe this is also the episode in which AJ finds out that they are part of a crime family.
Meadow tells him that.
Yeah, Meadow tells him that, and he is just blown away by that. He really thinks his whole family is just in the waste management business, you know, period, the end.
Normal, legitimate.
And, you know, she explains to him, because he gets in a fight at school with this jerky kid that I guess he used to be friends with. And, you know, they end up fighting a couple of times in school, and then finally they call each other out for, hey, let's, you know, do this outside of school such and such a time. And
then I believe the kid decides to chicken out, right?
Well, yeah, what happens is Tony sees this kid's dad at, like, a store, and it's like a gardening store or something, and he's holding, like, forget whether it's an axe or a shovel or something, but the dad kind of gets the sense that, okay, this guy is kind of serious. I should probably, you know,
recognize your face.
Warn my kid that maybe we don't want to fight with
these guys.
The little Tony Soprano kid, AJ.
Yeah.
You know, so that was a very interesting plot line. This is my favorite of the first 5 episodes.
Okay.
So because of that, I'm going to give it an A.
All right.
You know, again, who knows in the grand scheme of the series how this A will stack up, but
Meadowlands
for these
is
first
so
5, it's my favorite.
Cool.
And number 5, also real good, College.
This one is one that is...
It's one of your favorites.
It's a very good one. It's one that, along with the pilot, is cited as like often being one of the best of the series.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see what your input is this one.
Yeah, I definitely liked it. There's a lot going on here. It's mainly Tony and Meadow's story,
which you don't get to see that often in the series.
Is that right?
Just between the two of them. So it's a very crucial for them.
And it's nice. They go on a road trip up to Maine to visit some colleges, and she calls him out on being a mobster, which he vehemently denies.
And I have to say, that's one of my favorite parts. It's just like how he does. Like, are you kidding? There is no mafia. Like, he's really like...
he flat out says there is no mafia.
And I think it's really good about Tony because, as you learn about him, he really is trying in his own way to be a good father. He doesn't want his kids to have anything to do with this. He wants them...
He wants to keep them out.
Normal life. He doesn't want... But then he gives them pretty quickly, like, I might do a few illegal things on the side.
Right.
One or two of my businesses are legitimate. And she's just kind of looking at him like, really?
Yeah,
totally.
She knows. She knows for sure. At the same time, Carmela's at home with the flu, and their pastor comes over.
Ah, yes.
And this is such a juicy plot line.
This is some risque stuff. You'll like that.
They have dinner together, and they sort of...
watch movies together.
They have this bond, and they sort of mention a movie that they watched last week, Casablanca, and now they're watching some other movie, and he ends up spending the night, which Tony gets super PO'd about when he comes home the next day. She tells him up front, she says, look, the pastor was here all night, just in case any of the neighbors say, hey, listen, this strange car was here, all night at your house. He doesn't believe that nothing's going on, but she's got this ace in the hole that she knows that Melfi is a female because she called on the phone and Tony doesn't know that she knows that. He's been referring to her as a guy. So she sort of throws that in his face. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, up at Maine, Tony comes across this old associate who is now in the witness protection program, and he decides to have a little discussion with him. And at one point they're sort of following each other. He recognizes Tony and follows him and Meadow to their hotel that night and sort of watches them and even has his gun out ready to go. And he sees Tony with Meadow, and he's like, all right, maybe I don't want to
do that.
But they have a pretty interesting interaction little bit later on before they go home. Mm-hmm. So this one is really good as well. I don't like it as much as Meadowlands, to be honest. There's a lot going on in that one. Anything where there's a big Dr. Melfi plot line, like in the fourth episode, I like. But this is really cool, and you're right. It's great to see Tony and Meadow bonding like this. And I would imagine you don't see too much of that because if she's going off to college soon, she may not be living at home anymore, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know.
She's still pretty prevalent, but I feel like this is kind of like a lot of things in each of these episodes. You'll find it's a foundation. Like college is a foundation for Tony's relationship with Meadow. I think showing those two sides.
Okay.
There's Carmela's pseudo affair with the father does come up from time to time in future seasons. Of course, Artie's restaurant getting blown up has subtle repercussions throughout the rest of the series.
Yeah, they haven't talked about that too much yet.
Well, I don't know. Have they gotten into Artie and his wife too much? They argued a bit, right?
Not really.
Because later on, Artie will become more prominent. Like that whole... I won't spoil anything, but that whole thing with the restaurant remains a secret for a long time, but it kind of has this underlying current.
Okay.
So I guess... Well, this is the part where we'll kind of sum up everything.
Well, I'll give College an A- before we move on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess there were a couple things that we didn't quite hit upon. I'm not exactly sure which episode they're in, but there's the storyline that comes back about the getting speed for Meadow, and we see Drea De Matteo's character,
Adriana.
Yeah, we see her, and they sort of pick her up from school and like.
Chris,
quote unquote, hijack her or like, listen, you can't tell your dad about this. I was beaten up, this and that.
And he thinks that it was actually
right. He thinks it's because of that. Completely unrelated.
No,
but he thinks it is.
But he's worried. I guess upon reflection, just in general, how do you feel about these first 5 episodes?
I'm hooked, man.
Okay.
I think this was rated, I believe, the #1 show of all time by TV Guide a few years ago in one of their like top 100 polls or whatever.
It's pretty highly rated generally.
You know, I can't say yet that it's my favorite show of all time, but it's really good. I mean, I can see why it was such a huge success when it first came out.
Well, it's one thing I think is interesting is that the influence of The Sopranos is pretty much accepted by everybody.
Right. That is true.
It's like it changed the game. I think it showed that television drama could be as insightful and really ingenious as anything on film, for in the cinema.
Yeah, that's true. And I think up until this point, HBO's original programming was largely relegated to comedies. They had the Larry Sanders Show, and I believe Sex and the City had started by this point. And a couple shows like that. But in terms of, hard-hitting drama, this was a game changer. Certainly for cable television.
Absolutely.
So I'm very glad that we're going to be doing this every week, watching the 5 episodes and sort of talking about them. I'm very excited to see what happens next. I do know a few spoilers, unfortunately, just from... being an entertainment fan, I've seen clips and stuff.
Oh,
but,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Before we wrap up, any characters that stand out to you, haven't seen too much of you like, dislike?
Well, yeah. Okay, I'll tell you this.
Any plot points you like more than others?
The Meadow storylines I like, but I'm not quite behind Meadow herself yet.
Still annoying?
She's a teenage girl, junior or senior in high school.
I think she gets better personally.
I feel like she's, at this point, a little bit whiny, typical.
Doesn't really change too much, but...
Okay, fair enough. I like AJ a lot so far,
okay.
I think, and I like Tony's interactions with the people in his life.
Okay.
The bully's father, the science teacher, so I like seeing that. Generally, I just really like that family dynamic that they have, and I like seeing that develop.
Okay.
The outliers of the family, the Uncle Juniors, the Adrianas, I'm a little bit torn on those. I don't think I've seen quite enough of a lot of them yet to really... Christopher really is probably the only one, the main one that I've seen so far.
How do you feel about him?
I like him. I mean...
I think he's kind of not that great in the beginning.
I like him as a plot point. I'm not saying he's I'm getting behind him and I would hang out with him.
Has he touched on his screenplay stuff yet?
No, I don't think I've heard about the screenplays yet.
I'm surprised because he's a big fan of things. But
okay.
They established his character, I think, in the first episode where I think Tony talks about him and he's like, this kid is like a $500,000 car and he's still unhappy.
That's right.
Like,
yeah,
was he
like
driving
that
like
line.
a freaking Lincoln or something?
Yeah, I like that line. No, I think he's a good plot point for the show. Every plot he's been involved with so far, I've liked.
Okay, so you like Carmela?
Yeah, Carmela I like. I do hate Livia, but again... she serves a purpose, and I like that she's in the show because she gives Tony a higher reason to do everything. Because whenever him and Melfi are talking, and she brings up something about his mother, especially, I'm not sure which episode it was, 3 maybe, where she actually said, like, I feel like you hate your mother, how do you feel about that? Something along those lines. And he just flipped out. That was one of the times I believe he just went up and left and said, I can't do this anymore. You're ridiculous.
Obviously a sensitive topic.
It's a sensitive topic. And so I think as that develops, I'm going to see a lot more sort of with their relationship.
All right. I guess one last question. The balance between his actual family and the crime family, how do you think they're handling it so far? Because I remember that there was a lot of both. I felt like, from my experience, that the first seasons were very mafia-oriented. Mm-hmm. They kind of divert a little bit from it, and then I think it goes back into it.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly, maybe upon reflection, but how do you think they're handling the balance so far? Because I feel like, from what you've said, they haven't gotten too much into the crime family stuff, it seems, because you haven't mentioned Paulie or Silvio or any of those guys
yet. Here's the thing.
Okay.
You are huge on the mob stuff, the crime stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not as versed in that.
Okay.
I've seen some movies, but for me, the most interesting stuff all revolves around the family.
Okay.
And I liked sort of the bits and pieces like Tony's conversation with Uncle Junior about taking things over, I really liked. But I feel like as of yet, I'm definitely enjoying the family side of it. But here's what I like about it. I like that we're seeing pretty much everything through Tony's eyes. So in that regard, we do get to see both sides of it fairly equally. We see him at the bar a lot, and then we also see him, in the therapy office a lot, and then we see things like in the pilot episode where he's, running that guy down with his car and beating him senseless. I sort of like the little snippets of that more than the full picture as of yet.
Okay.
But I think a lot of these characters we haven't seen a lot of. Like, Silvio hasn't had, like, that much of a plot point yet.
Because I guess
he's there.
Early on, I guess they haven't really done that much. Because,
right.
like, you will get whole episodes about Silvio, about Paul.
Okay.
They will expand on that.
Yeah.
I think even throughout the season. But I do remember the first couple episodes, I think, from what it sounds like, is really more about the family.
Right.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
I think they get more into the crime stuff as it goes along.
Okay.
Because it has bigger repercussions.
Okay, and that makes sense. Yeah, maybe I'll see more of that in this week's shows. Episodes, I should say.
I'm just curious.
But,
no, don't look. But, yeah, you'll get to see more of the comings and goings, I think, later on.
Okay.
There's actually, I think, episode 10, which you'll see this week coming up, I think you'll like because it has a music business angle to it.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. So
that will be very cool.
You might like that. But yeah, that's good to hear. I think you're really liking it so far.
Yeah, I'm very glad you're letting me borrow it, and it's great to talk about it.
I just love hearing your reactions. It's cool. I'm glad you like it. I wasn't 100% sure because, I mean, I know it's heavy. I know it's really highly rated, but it's also very not what I would think Dan would typically watch.
That is typically true. I growing up was much more into the comedy shows than I was dramas. It wasn't really till, I would say, Lost, honestly, that I was really hooked on a drama. And now, I still probably watch more sitcoms, but I mean, there's a lot of dramas on the air right now I really like. So I am finding that balance a little bit. And this is certainly very well written, with great characters. So
absolutely,
it's pretty easy to get behind.
I mean, it goes on, and people go on to write, Mad Men and stuff like that from Sopranos.
Yeah,
it has a great influence. I'm glad to hear you're liking it, and I'm looking forward to talking about more of it.
Awesome.
So yeah, guys, that was the first part of the segment. So hopefully you like it. And if you don't, I'm probably going to be doing it anyway. So get used to some Sopranos. All right, comment, subscribe, and check out Film Fanatics as well. All right, guys.
See you next time.
Yeah.